Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to be sharing my personal belief on how I think dreams operate and work. So, to give some context, right, my personal belief, which is not supported by factual evidence, but my personal belief is that when we dream, we ultimately are experiencing a version of ourselves in a different dimension or in a different universe. Now, the reason why I think that is because every single time we dream, we never dream from the perspective of somebody else. We always dream from the perspective of who we are, but we're ultimately living a very, very different lifestyle, right? When we also dream, sometimes we dream in a paradise world where we're doing things that we could probably never imagine that we could do in this lifetime. And there's also versions of ourselves that sometimes we dream and, we ultimately could experience those experiences, right? And so, to give you guys an example, of a dream of myself that I was experiencing in another universe. I have a picture diagram to demonstrate. So this was my dream last night, and I'm gonna kind of explain what's going on and what I ultimately think happened in this version of myself in another dimension. So I apologize for the bad drawing skills. Um, I was never taught how to draw well in school, so bear with me. But essentially, right? Don't laugh. I know you guys are already laughing. But essentially, in this dream that I had last night, I was in a car, I was in a vehicle with some of my family members, and we were on a very long bridge, right? And in this bridge, it goes up and down and up and down. And as we were driving, right, at first, I'm kind of questioning what is going on? Why are we on this very long bridge? Right? And you got to think about it as if I'm looking from the first person perspective in this vehicle. So as we're going down this bridge, I look to my right. And as I look to my right, I realize that there's huge waves that are crashing onto this bridge. And as we're driving and driving and driving, right, these waves ultimately end up hitting the vehicle. And we're ultimately under a lot of water. And I can experience that, right, which is crazy. And so as we're down at the bottom of this bridge, the water is collapsing over us, and I feel the pressure and the stream of the water hitting us and smacking the vehicle. But for some reason, the vehicle does not collapse over the bridge, and we end up, going on the bridge, and then we end up going to the top, right? So, and also it's a sunny day. That's why the sun's out. But this was what I could remember from the dream. And obviously, it sounds pretty bizarre. It sounds crazy, right? But a version of me was able to experience this, right? And because I was able to experience that in a dream, I believe that there was a version of myself that was experiencing this exact reality. Now, I want to also share you guys something else, right? So, I'm sure you guys have experienced this where maybe you are dreaming and you end up falling off of a building, right? And before you end up crashing, and let's say like you end up dying, right? You always wake up. And the reason why I feel like you wake up is because in another universe or another dimension, where let's say you did fall off the building, right? Or let's say you're very, very close to death, you get to experience yourself in another world or another, universe or dimension, experiencing what death ultimately feels like, right? So you're not obviously like on the ground. You never actually hit the pavement, and then you're laying there, and you're like, "Fuck, like I'm about to die," right? But you experience what another version of you experienced before they die, right? So I know that's a little heavy, but I think that kind of puts it into perspective why I have this belief. Um, and that's kind of just been something that I've been thinking about a little bit, more often. So obviously, there's no factual evidence to be able to prove that another version of ourselves actually is experiencing this. But I think that all great ideas come from somewhere. And maybe I'm not the only one that thinks this. I'm actually really curious to know what your guys' personal perspectives on why you think that maybe we dream is. And you can leave it in the comment, and we can have a conversation about that. But yeah, when I woke up this morning, I was just like, what the hell? Like, why did I experience that? And why was it that specific example, of me on this bridge and I'm going down and, waves are crashing above us. And it's also with people that I know in this vehicle. Really, really bizarre, you know? So I think there's actually a lot of beauty in when we dream. And I think that our dreams are kind of maybe unlocking um, a part of ourselves that we never really tapped into, right? Some people say that you're entering your unconscious mindset, but I don't necessarily know if that's actually the case, because I don't know why my unconscious mind would be in a vehicle and we're on this long bridge and there's waves crashing above us. I can't really see that connection there. But like I said, that's just my idea of how I think dreams work. And yeah, I believe that dreams are a portal of us experiencing our lives in a different dimension. And yeah, I guess I'll share one more thing that I think might be very interesting is maybe that version of myself, right, that I envisioned that's on this bridge in the car, maybe when that person ends up going to bed and they are sleeping, maybe they experience this version of myself in this world, right, in this universe, in this dimension. Obviously, they're not thinking about it from the lens of like the most boring, aspects of my life, but maybe the parts that are kind of exciting, right? But those are just ideas. I'm not entirely sure, if it was very coherent and can make sense to you guys. But that's why I tried to draw it out. So yeah, just thought I'd make another YouTube video for this year, and yeah, just share my own perspective. So, hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Leave your thoughts below in the comments and feel free to like and subscribe. So, take care, guys. Have a good one. Peace out.